Materialist is not your typical rom-com, but I really like this movie, and as of right now, it's in my top 10 favorite movies of the year, so let's talk about it. But as always, before we get started, if you're new here, my name is Erin, and I talk all things movies and TV, but really mostly movies, so if you're into that sort of thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. It would be greatly appreciated, and while you're at it, if you like my videos, hit that like button as well. And of course, if you've already seen the movie, leave your thoughts on it down below in the comments. I would love to see what you guys think of this movie. But without further ado, let's talk about Materialists. So this is Celine Song's second outing as a director, and I have to say, this woman is slowly becoming one of my favorite directors today. Past Lives was freaking amazing, as we all know, and that is a tough film to follow up. But with this movie, I have to say, I think she has another hit on her hands because I thoroughly enjoyed Materialist all the way through, and I can't wait to see what she does next because she is 2 for 2 right now in my opinion. But in her second movie, we follow a matchmaker played by Dakota Johnson who soon finds herself in a love triangle with a seemingly perfect rich man played by Pedro Pascal and her loving ex played by Chris Evans. Jumping right into the good, and the first thing I have here are the performances. I think this cast as a whole did a really good job. I'll start with Dakota Johnson. Now, a lot of people online are saying that she was bad in this, and I just don't think that at all. I think she did a really good job. I'm not saying it was some Oscar level performance, but it's definitely not as bad as everyone has been saying it was. She has this semi-long monologue, I would say, where she is talking to one of her clients for her matchmaking business, and she's looking right into the camera, almost kind of calling out the audience as well as her client, and I think she delivered that really well, and honestly, it was one of my favorite parts of the movie. Her character views relationships as just mathematical equations and checking boxes, so she doesn't show much emotion and is just overall a cold character or person overall. So she does have a couple of line deliveries that come across as dry, but I think that works for who her character is. She's not this bubbly, fun girl that you would usually expect to get in a rom-com. She's more serious and has her own problems, and that's why I think Dakota Johnson's performance in this was good because it worked for who her character was. Then we also have Pedro Pascal, who is his usual charming self, and he plays a pretty good perfect rich guy, if I do say so myself. But I think the star of the show here was definitely Chris Evans. You wouldn't think that a guy that looks like him can pull off a 37-year-old struggling actor who doesn't have a girlfriend. Usually guys like that don't look like Chris Evans, aka Captain America, but he is able to pull that off in this movie, and he does a really good job. I truly do think this is one of, if not the best performance of his career, and the best way I can explain it is that he just gives a very vulnerable performance that allows us to see his character as human with real human problems. And that is a common theme throughout this movie. These characters felt like real people with real people problems, and that extends to Zoe Winter's character, who was a client of Dakota Johnson's character, who probably has the second best performance in this movie. You could make the argument that she had the best performance, so for her to be in this movie with those 3 stars of Chris Evans, Dakota Johnson, and Pedro Pascal, and for her to arguably outshine them all is very impressive. Next up for the good is this movie's exploration on modern dating, which is kind of the whole point of this thing. But I think Celine Song takes such an authentic and real approach to this world and really points out the problems, hypocrisies, and just unrealistic standards on both sides. No pun intended, but this movie really does show how superficial and materialistic the modern dating world has become. That brings up the question of, does real love still exist, or have relationships just become this transactional thing that's all about status? And we see Dakota Johnson's character struggle with that throughout this movie, as she must choose between the perfect rich guy who has everything to offer her but love, or the guy who only has love to offer. The way Celine Song tackles that is just beautiful in this thing. But at the core of this movie, I truly believe it's about humans just wanting to feel valuable and what we will do and accept in order to feel that way. And that's where this movie subverts your expectations, because it does take the form of your typical rom-com, but it actually is a character study on people in the modern dating world that unpacks itself in a very vulnerable way that feels authentic. And finally, for the good, I have the dialogue. With this being more of a romantic drama and having a bit of a slower pace, it was important that the dialogue was enough to keep you engaged. And just like in past lives, Celine's song was able to create engaging dialogue once again. But the coolest part about this dialogue, and I've used this word a couple of times before in this video, was just how vulnerable it was. And I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again describing this movie, but again, that just added to the authenticity of this movie and the authenticity of these characters and their problems. This dialogue makes you think. It's interesting, and there are also a couple of lines in there that are pretty powerful in my opinion. Moving on to the so-so, and the only thing I have here is that even though I loved this movie's themes and I loved the way they explored them, it was a little on the nose at times. There were a few moments in this movie where it would just tell you its themes instead of showing you and letting you figure it out. I mean, Dakota Johnson at least 3 or 4 times said that she wanted a rich guy and someone that checks her boxes in this film. Don't get me wrong, the themes were good, but they just weren't all that hard to pick up on. And I'm not saying it should be hard to pick up on the themes of this movie or really any movie in general. I'm just saying maybe it's sometimes better to just kind of show your audience those themes and let them figure it out for themselves, instead of just telling us that the modern dating world has become materialistic and that real love might not exist anymore because all relationships are just mathematical calculations based on the number of boxes you are able to fill or check. And that right there is not my deep thinking critical explanation of this film. They literally tell you all that through the dialogue in this movie. So at the end of the day, it's not really a big deal, but I do wish this movie did a little bit more showing than telling when it came to the themes. And finally, getting into the bad, and the only thing I have here is that the trailers were very misleading for this movie, and I think that's why this film is getting a lot of heat online right now. This was advertised as your typical rom-com, so for your average moviegoer who may not be too familiar with A24 movies and Celine's song, you could imagine that they were in for quite the surprise, because this movie, as I said before, is more of a romantic drama that is a character study. It's not your fun, bubbly rom-com that we are used to, but it definitely is marketed that way, so I think in turn that may have attracted the wrong audience who was expecting that fun rom-com. And I'm not saying the general audience can't enjoy this movie, because they definitely can, but I just think this movie kind of lends itself better to a niche audience. But with that said, I still think this is a really good movie. It's got a great exploration on love, human relationships, and value of oneself. The cast does a great job, and Celine's song is able to direct and tell this story with authentic, vulnerable dialogue that will make you think. This isn't your typical rom-com, but it's still a dang good movie. Those are my thoughts on Materialist. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments, and as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, get your Eazy Apparel at shopeasyapparel.com. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.